This webinar is being presented by the California Department of Education's Early Education Division and Fiscal and Administrative Services Division. This webinar is being held on May 19th, 2022, and is scheduled to run from 3:30 until about 5 p.m. And with that, I'd like to welcome Stephen Profiter, Director of the Early Education Division.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Alana. And as Alana mentioned, my name is Stephen. Go by Steve sometimes. I've got the distinct honor of being able to work with the passionate individuals that you see on and off this off this screen here. We want to welcome you to our monthly webinar. We're really excited to engage with you all today, share a bit of our agenda, which we'll see in another slide. It's May, so it's incredible to think that we are near the end of a school year. One highlight of this month, and you all have likely heard, is that we are preparing to enter our next budget year with a record, smashing almost a surplus of almost 100 billion. So we're excited to discuss some of the proposals, the updates in May revise, and you know, cover some new pieces as well. And I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Virginia Early.
Hi, everyone. My name is Virginia Early. I'm the administrator of the policy office in the Early Ed Division. And thank you so much for being here. We're going to talk a lot about what's happening in policy with the May revised proposals today for early education. So thank you for everything you've been doing to share what's happening in your programs with us and with the legislature and the governor's teams as they work on it. And you'll hear more from me later. I'll now turn it over to Alana, who will be our moderator.
Hello again. I'm Alana Pinsler, and I'm a child development consultant in the State Preschool in the Early Education and System Improvement Support Office in the Early Education Division. And again, I'll be your moderator. To help answer questions and make this run smoothly, our wonderful team behind the scenes. From the policy office, we have Patricia Gonzalez, Jennifer Osalvo, and Eddie Tantamono. From the UPK Implementation and Support Office, we have Shayna Burgos Vasquez, trying to say that right. And from the Program Quality Implementation Office, PQI, we have Amy Silva, Cassandra Lewis, and Nadia Gersi. From the Early Education, Nutrition, and Fiscal Services, we have Lucy Mosqueda, Kate Washington, Yashima Daniels, and Alan Lynch. From the Administrative and Fiscal Services, we have Jackie Lawn. From the Applied Data Research and Evaluation, we have Jane Liang, Josephine Chan, and Stephen Granados. And from the Director's Office, we have Brianne Rood and Sarah Dawson. We also want to mention our Technology Service Division, who ensure that the link is working for everybody today, and that also closed captioning is available for you. You can utilize that by turning it on by clicking on the little CC button on the bottom right corner of your screen. As always, our team is committed to being as responsive as possible with your questions. As a reminder, we may not be able to answer every question. Also, our chat box is disabled. We will be using that to send slides, links to you, but you cannot chat with us there. Please utilize the Q&A feature to ask us questions. And when you do ask us questions, be sure to give us as much detail as possible so we can give you the best response possible. Next slide. Let's take a look at this afternoon's agenda that Virginia sort of hinted at. This webinar will be divided into two parts. The first part we'll start with Universal Pre-Kindergarten or UPK updates. Then we're going to dive into that budget process and discuss May revise updates. After, we'll give an update on the rate and quality work group. Then we'll do questions and answers. After that question and answer session, we'll have part two. While we work some questions through in real time, our team will also be looking at the Q&A feature and responding there as well. We also want to highlight that the webinar is just a little bit longer than our typical webinar, as there is enough large topics to cover multiple webinars. Instead, we're just having one larger one, so we appreciate you being with us today. The first portion is with the May Revise Dedicate, and then the second portion will be with the Child Development Management Information System, or Cdmi S maintenance, and the optimization updates, or the M&O updates. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Shana for the UPK updates.
And so sorry we did a slight change of order, so it's actually me. Apologize, Alana.
Well, welcome, Virginia.
Thank you so much. Sorry, everybody, again. So moving on to the next slide, we're going to, we know that many of you are very curious to understand what will the rules be for my programs next year? How does this all work? Have they decided things yet? Are they still working on them? So wanted to start, before we go into the actual proposals, just run through sort of where we are in the process. So we all see from this timeline here, January 10 was the time that the governor's proposed budget was released. So that's sort of a first draft, essentially, of the budget proposal. We got more details February 1st about what the governor was proposing February 1st, and that was with trailer bill language, and that was released. And then starting in late February, budget subcommittee hearings began. And so that's where the legislature started talking with the governor's administration about the proposals, hearing from many of you in public comment, and so forth. On May 13th, so not even a full week ago, the governor updated his proposals and released a revised, it's called May revision, to his governor's budget proposal from January. So basically what's happening now is that we've started to have budget committee hearings now to review the May revised proposals. And the legislature will be deciding in the next couple of weeks what they would like to put in their version of the budget. Then they will be negotiating with the governor around what happens in the final package. And by June 15th, the budget bill must be passed and sent to the governor for his signature. And then we have our fiscal year starting July 1st. So we wanted to sort of clarify this timeline for you, anyone that's new to this world, so that many of you want to know right away about certain things, and we wanted to clarify, we actually can't tell you for sure until we get through this process. And we know it's challenging because the fiscal year starts very soon. So that's a visual on where we are. Moving on to our next slide, let's dive into the governor's May revision proposals around Universal Transitional Kindergarten, or UTK. So the governor May revise proposals still propose to fund the first year of TK expansion, to expand eligibility for TK to all children turning 5 years old between September 2nd and February 2nd. So this was something that he was proposing in January. It's part of last year's budget agreement. They've updated the estimates of what that will cost a little bit based on updated information from May, but it's still sort of the same policy that's moving forward in his May revise. There are additional proposals in the May revision to make it easier for schools to find TK teachers in a couple ways. So first, by allowing teachers with preschool teaching permits who hold bachelor's degrees, meet basic skill requirements, and are enrolled in a credential program by July 1, 2024, to be assigned as a teacher of record in a TK classroom until June 30th, 2026. And then there's also language that clarifies that substitute teachers in TK are not required to meet those additional TK teacher requirements around child development. in addition to that, the language also proposes fiscal penalties for not meeting TK class size, ratio, or teacher requirements in TK. And that's specified in the Education Omnibus, to use a fancy word, trailer bill that was released last week. And I will put a link to that in the chat when I'm finished speaking. And then there's language proposed that requires TK data to be collected separately from kindergarten data. So definitely a lot around TK. But also, moving into the next slide, there's a lot around state preschool, the California State Preschool Program in the Governor's May revision. So you can see from the slide a couple highlights. First of all, the May revise proposes to waive family fees for the next fiscal year and proposes money to pay for those fee waivers. There's also a hold harmless proposed, the language that allows for contractors who are open and providing services and align with their program calendar to be paid at the lesser of their MRA or costs, whichever is less. And this is different from what was before the pandemic, where it was a lesser of costs MRA or a computation based on attendance. And so we know there's been some confusion about this. Our understanding is that Department of Finance will be updating language to clarify that the hold harmless will be continuing as it was in the current year and the year before, and they're updating a version of their language that is currently on their website. So our understanding is that sort of what's represented here on the bullet will be reflected in that updated language. And this is also aligning with the way that it's being done for the childcare programs at DSS, and that language is currently posted on the Department of Finance's website as well. And then many of you may remember that in January, the governor proposed to allow state preschool contractors to serve 2-year-old children. At that time, they weren't providing an adjustment factor, so they revised their proposal to allow for a 1.8 adjustment factor to the contract rate for 2-year-old children. There are also some technical adjustments to the way that dual language learners will be identified in the California State Preschool Program. Many of you may remember us talking about Assembly Bill 1363, an implementation for that around dual language learner identification. So this would slightly modify that. It really affects changes in a couple ways. First, if you, under AB 13633, which we'll wait to release guidance on until we see which way the budget goes, contractors are required to do an instrument at enrollment to identify if a child is a dual language learner, and then a follow-up interview on language and interests for all children. And so this technical adjustment would only require the interview for children that had been identified as a dual language learner. And it also makes some tweaks around how dual language learners identified as English learners in the K-12 system would be defined. And then finally, the budget includes a 6.56% cost of living adjustment. So that's significant change, significant cost of living adjustment that we haven't really seen. COLA's this high, and it has been increased even since the governor's January proposal. So moving on to our next slide, going into May revised proposals from the governor around infrastructure. There is a lot here around infrastructure that is on top of significant proposals from January. So to start off with, there's a proposal for an additional $1.8 billion for TK through 12 school facilities construction, another additional $1.8 billion to address outstanding school maintenance and deferred maintenance issues, And then those both are on top of significant investments proposed for January, bringing the total amount for school facilities, if this budget were to pass as the governor has proposed it, with billions of additional funds to cover school facilities, including TK, moving forward. There's also a current program that allows for LEAs to receive facilities funding to support state preschool, TK, and full-day kindergarten facilities. And the May revision amends this language to allow community colleges to receive that facilities funding if they're operating preschool programs on behalf or in lieu of the school district. And then finally, for those that aren't LEAs, there's $200.5 million in the Department of Social Services budget augmented to develop and repair existing childcare and preschool infrastructure at non-local education agency community-based organizations, especially in low-income communities. So a lot on facilities. We definitely can't get to UPK without significant infrastructure and development, so we're very happy to see this. Moving on to our next slide. The governor's May revise also does significant investments around the Expanded Learning and Opportunities Program, or ELOP. So specifically, this provides an expanded day, full year instruction and enrichment for all elementary school students, with a focus on local education agencies with highest concentrations of low-income students, English language learners, and youth and foster care. So the May revision increases already significant investment by an additional $403 million ongoing Proposition 98 General Fund, which brings the total ongoing program to $4.8 billion and fully funding implementation 4 years ahead of schedule, with $2,500 for every low-income student, English language learner, or youth in foster care in the state. So this is a significant investment, ensuring that children, as they attend UPK, can have access to a full day programs that meet the needs of their families. There's also a proposed increase of $63 million one-time Proposition 98 General Fund. And for those of you that Proposition 98 sounds like jargon and you're not quite sure what it means, it's the money that the state is constitutionally required to spend on education. And this is a total of $1 billion in a one-time Proposition 98 General Fund to support Expanded Learning Opportunities Program infrastructure, with a focus on integrating arts and music programming into the enrichment options for students. So there's some other key proposals as we go into our next slide. There is, as we go to the next slide, so there is $1.5 billion to expand access to community schools grants to every eligible local education agency that opts to apply on behalf of its high need schools. And we've talked a lot for years in the early education community about how our focus on the whole child and all of that. And so seeing the focus come into the TK-12 system around community schools is very encouraging. The budget also, through the May revise, provides $85 million to expand and augment work of the Early Math Initiative and to coordinate that initiative with other efforts that are happening around math and science. And then there are also significant investments in educator workforce pathways and professional learning for a number of different programs, including amendments to proposals from January to make it more clear that early education is part of these proposals. And then there's also $15 million to support teachers in completing coursework necessary to receive a supplementary state certification in reading and literacy. So more early literacy, even on top of the early literacy proposals that are still proposed from January. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking as we go to the next slide. a lot of you are thinking, well, where's the rate increase for the California State Preschool Program? We know that a lot of folks are asking that question. We know that the legislature is considering potentially putting that in their plans. They had some hearings about that. We don't know ultimately what will happen on rates, but I wanted to re-highlight for everyone that there is currently a rate and quality work group. It has a purpose to assess the existing quality standards for childcare and development, as well as preschool programs, and the methodology for establishing those reimbursement rates for programs. And the work group is required to provide recommendations relating to those topics, both to a joint labor management committee comprised of the state and the Child Care Provider United Union, to the Department of Finance, and to the Joint Legislative Budget Committee no later than August 15th. So this work group meets at least monthly. This month there are 2 meetings. These meetings are public, so you can attend and provide public comment. And the next meeting is actually tomorrow. So feel free to attend, and you can see the information there. It's tomorrow, May 20th, 2022, from 8:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. So lots of things around the May revise. I'm sure there are lots of questions. So I'm going to turn my attention to that and hand it over to Shanna to talk more about UPK implementation.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Shanna Burkles-Vasquez, and I'm the administrator of the new UPK Implementation and Support Office of the Early Education Division in CDE. I'm really excited to be here. As this is my first webinar, I will probably be relying on my notes a little bit more than our other presenters, and I appreciate your understanding. This is an exciting year for UPK, and as you've heard from the governor's May revision proposal, it shows the continued investments of UPK. UPK's the beginning phase of planning is coming to a close, with local education agencies, or LEAs, and County Office of Education, or COEs, presenting plans for implementing UPK to local governing boards or bodies by June 30th, 2022. Be sure to consult the planning template for recommended planning questions to support the development of this comprehensive plan. This upcoming school year, the TK eligibility window, as Virginia mentioned before, will expand to meet all children turning 5 between September 2nd and February 2nd, allowing for more 4-year-olds to have access to TK programs. And then we also want to remind you that as the state budget in 21-22 allocated $200 million as an early learning initiative for the goal of expanding access to pre-kindergarten programs. School districts and charter schools will be receiving money to support that planning and implementation of expanding UPK, as will county offices of education to support LEAs as they expand access to pre-kindergarten programs. We're very excited to tell you that both funding packages are in their last stage of internal approvals, and we anticipate funds to be released in early June. I know everyone's been waiting for those, and so we're very excited. Next slide. As part of UPK implementation, I want to update you on a grant from the Early Education System Improvement Office. The Early Education Teacher Development Grant was released at the end of March, and the request for funding application, RFA, is due May 27th, 2022. That is a note. Please note that change. On May 13th, the erratum was issued with updated timelines, dates, and recommendations for data sources to use for calculating Section V, the allocation priority section. The CDE is aware that some applicants have already used other data sources, and they are able to use those. However, the data sources in the erratum are recommended. All details and documents, such as the application and its the instructions and the recording of a technical assistance webinar that occurred in April there's a link that we're going to post in the chat for that. And then if you have any questions regarding the Early Education Teacher Development Grant, please submit an email to wpkworkforcerfa@cde.ca.gov. Next slide. Before we share supports for UPK implementation, I want to quickly review UPK. UPK is a mixed delivery system that brings together programs across early learning and K-12. It includes California State Preschool Program, or CSPP, along with other pre-kindergarten programs that serve 3- and 4-year-old children. That includes Head Start, community-based programs, and private preschools. Now what I want to do is share with you some resources that we've created to support the work in implementing UPK. We'll be dropping a link for each of these supports in the chat. The first one I want to highlight are the resources on UPK, including the UPK Planning template, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation. This template contains required and recommended questions for LEAs to consider in planning for UPK. You can also find over 200 pages of guidance documents that the CDE has created to assist with UPK implementation on this link. Guidance corresponds to the template and introduces early education concepts, research, resources, programs, partnership, opportunities, and policies. The next link that we're going to share in the chat is to the UPK Frequently Asked Questions page. This page contains answers to frequently asked questions. We are in the process of updating this page, and so please make sure to check back frequently. Some of the topics you'll find there are TK, UPK, funding, workforce, among others. Next slide. The third resource that I wanted to share with you today is California Educators Together. We have created a UPK P3 group on this platform to share resources and guidance for local education agencies and partners to use in preparation for the implementation of UPK in California. So please use that link to visit that. There are numerous resources available. The next one is the EDD. The EED has been hosting UPK Office Hours. We have just completed our 8th office hours, where we provide technical assistance to LEAs and COEs around planning and implementation of UPK. Our next 2 office hours are May 25th and June 15th. You can find past office hour slides and future registration information on the link that we're posting in the chat. We also have a UPK webinar coming up. It will be June 8th from 3:30 to 5. It's the 3rd of a universal pre-kindergarten webinar series focused on working with and supporting our education partners as they consider, plan for, and implement UPK. The California Department of Education in this webinar is collaborating with Head Start leaders to explore how to leverage the different funding sources for transitional kindergarten programs to meet, along with our CSPP providers, to meet the needs of families, students, and programs. That link should be going out in a day or so, so please make sure to check for that. As a reminder, we also have a UPK mailbox for any questions. We'll drop the link to that in the chat as well. And now I will pass it back to Alana, who will lead us into the next section of the webinar.
Thanks, Shanna. Okay, so there are a lot of questions in here about what is in the proposed budget. And some of them are specific questions. Can we apply for that new $1.5 billion grant? Who's going to be eligible for that? So I'd like to invite Virginia to come back and just sort of reiterate that at the moment, there is no specifics to share. There are just items that are currently in the revision.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to show folks the timeline so they understand, the main revision is a proposal. Ultimately, the legislature has to vote on the budget, and then the Senate votes on the budget, the Assembly votes on the budget. They have to get agreement between the Senate and the Assembly on what will be in the budget. And then they have to work with the governor around what is the governor willing to sign, because the governor has to sign the budget once it's passed. So at this point, what we've seen is the governor's proposals, but we haven't seen what the Senate and the Assembly are considering on voting on. They've released some initial items indicating a sort of a direction for the plan, but they haven't actually voted on that yet. And so their first step was to sort of have hearings where the governor and the administration came and presented their proposals, and there was some discussion on that. So there were hearings yesterday, for example, for that. And so moving forward, what's going to happen is that we'll start to see, more details as the next week or 2 or 3 come, so that by June 15th, the budget bill is when it's required to be passed. And by then we'll have a much better sense of what is in, what is not in, and then the details of how it's in. Because right now, for example, if you were to ask me, what about this or that, what, there are lots of questions in the chat about the rates, for example. Right now, I can't tell you what your contract rate will be for starting in July and August, right? Because first of all, the governor has released a proposal that includes a cost of living adjustment to rates, but doesn't include anything beyond that. But we know that the Senate and the Assembly are looking at potential rate increases. And we don't know what will finally shake out after the negotiations and end up in the final budget. So we don't want to tell you something when the discussions are still ongoing. And proposed language that's proposed now may change as well. So there are a lot of caveats, but we also think it's important to share with you all what's being proposed, so that as you work in your programs and you think about the impact to you, that you can share how these proposals are impacting you, what types of things might be necessary to consider as this process moves forward.
Thank you very much for that clarity, Virginia. There is a question regarding UPK as a mixed delivery system. So I'd like to call on our UPK office admin, Shana, to talk a bit. So the question is about providing more information on how UPK is a mixed delivery system. How are CBOs and CSPP sites actually a part of the system?
Hi, yes. So first of all, that's a great opportunity to plug our webinar that is coming up. That is a great opportunity to hear more about how you can blend and braid other mixed delivery options to create a full day of learning for students. So one of the things that you can do is that you can take a CSPP or your ELOP or any of those other options that we talked about and combine them together to create a full day option. We will be going into greater detail at the webinar. I know that is just a teaser and that did not really answer your question. That is something that could take up the whole webinar. So please be sure to check back in. And if you have any specific questions, please go ahead and put them send us an email at the UPK FAQ email address, so that we can address some specific questions that you may have and support you in your work on creating and implementing UPK. And Stephen Profiter, I think, wants to talk.
Yeah, I think I can add. So thank you, Shanna, and thank you, Peggy, for that question. We do get that question a lot. So when if you've seen our the funnel graphic, right? We envision UPK as imperfect. Thank you so much for jumping there. We envision UPK, and so it's universal pre-kindergarten. UPK as being inclusive of the programs that you see here on the slide. So while we acknowledge that transitional kindergarten is funded to provide universal access by 25-26, TK is not the only program that provides services to meet this universal, to meet universal access to full day learning the year before kindergarten. So when we talk about full day, we talk about layering funds, we talk about TK and expanded learning, we talk about TK and state preschool. We talk about them in the same classroom. We talk about blended models and braided models. It's really it's the different fund sources and the different opportunities to meet the different needs of the families and the children of California. One program alone can't do it, right? So we talk about UPK, it's inclusive of all of our programs, which are currently community-based organizations and local educational agencies and family child care home education networks. They're part of UPK. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you both so much. It's always good to know that there is a lot of ways that we can join together to provide a response. Okay, so the next question that we see, there was a question specifically for you, Virginia, about repeating the continuation of hold harmless or hold harmless light. Can I have you come back and speak a bit more to that?
Yeah. So I think this has been an area for confusion for folks because the Education Omnibus Trailer Bill that we put in the chat actually says something different from what we're saying here on this webinar. And so what we're saying on the webinar is based on our understanding of edits that will be made. And based on, So basically, our understanding of what it will be is that it will essentially be the same hold harmless for state preschool as has existed this year. So the hold harmless that exists this year is that programs have to be open and operating in accordance with their program calendar, that they can be closed, but only if there's a public health order. And if they meet those requirements, then they're paid at the lesser of their MRA or their costs. So that's the current law for this year. And our understanding is that the intent is to extend that another year. In order to have that happen, they have to make some tweaks to the language that they put in the proposed trailer bill that is in the document, and our understanding is that is in process.
Excellent, thank you. Let's see for some other questions that are getting highlighted. Okay, there is a question about community college and a community college CSPP as it's a lab school that's training EC teachers if we're not eligible. I'm going to tap on Virginia for this one. I bet you know the answer.
Yes, thank you so much, Alana. So great questions on exactly how community colleges will have access to the CSPP, TK, and full day kindergarten grant program, facilities grant program funds. I sort of said what we do know, which is that the May revision added language to that statute, or would add if the legislature agrees with this, that a community college district may participate in the program if the community college district operates a preschool program on behalf of or in lieu of a school district or county office of education. So that language is on page 42 of the Ed Omnibus Trailer Bill. So I'll put that link back in the chat. So if you want to take a closer look at it, it's on page 42. We are still waiting for more details of what that means and who would have access to that. So we have many questions ourselves there. And I know there are some questions about whether there are any community college lab school preschools that actually have that status. So if you have information that'd be useful to us as we look at this proposal, we urge you to share that with us in the Q&A. And as these proposals move closer toward final adoption, we know that folks will bring up questions and help refine and provide more clarity to the language proposed at this time.
Excellent. Let's see for some other questions that we are able to answer that don't have to do with potential funding and potential budgets that we don't have our specifics for. Let's see, there's a question about if EAP was in the budget this year. I think that'll be an easy response. Can I call on you, Stephen, to answer that?
Absolutely, and I am thrilled to say yes. So in essence, in May revise, it's, I know that I think sometimes we sit with this too, is if we don't see something in May revise that's related to a January budget, doesn't mean it's not there anymore. Like the slate is wiped clean and whatever comes out in May is yeah, whatever's there in May kind of replaces what's in January. So the good news is it's there. It's still part of the administration's proposal in the May revise. We're very excited to say that, as well as some of the proposals in the January budget around 10% of children and 10% of funded enrollment in state preschool programs being reserved for children with disabilities. So lots of support to do those things that we all know are in the best interests of children and families.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, there is a question here regarding May revision and about the fiscal penalties. So I'm going to ask that Virginia come back.
Yeah, so the question, oh, sorry, did you want to say
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, so the question is about whether the fiscal penalties apply to ages outside of the mandatory eligible, or that the children that districts are required to serve in any year. We often call this early admittance TK or ETK, and whether that applies. So the language as drafted now, and it's not the law yet, it's still a proposal until the legislature passes it and the governor signs it, it's still in proposal form. But the proposed language addresses, folks that are, the TK classroom requirements. So if a district is choosing to provide TK, whether it's children that are sort of enrolled in TK because the district is required to serve them, or children that are enrolled in TK because the district has chosen to serve them, those requirements would apply, and those fiscal penalties would apply based on our current understanding. If that, once this becomes the law, we'll issue guidance on it to make sure everyone's clear on how this applies. But our interpretation of the way this is currently written is that, as I shared. On terms of the question that this person asked about, okay, what does this mean for class size? It can be higher. How is that being defined as relates to the fiscal penalties? The basic way that the proposal works is that for school districts and charter schools that don't maintain an average class size of not more than 24 pupils, there's a formula that's specified. And if you're looking in the trailer bill link that we put in the chat, this is on page 57. But there's a formula where essentially what you would do is you would take the number of additional classrooms that would be needed to get you to an average class size of 24, multiply that by 24, and multiply by essentially the per pupil rate, and that would be the dollar amount associated with the fiscal penalty.
Thank you, Virginia. Okay, let's do some scrolling. There was a question around 12-month eligibility for CSVP in this year's May revision. And there was a question about, let's see, let's find, okay, Erica. Will this be for families certified on or after July 1st of, I'm assuming you're meaning this year, 2022? Or is this for families currently in their 12-month eligibility? Virginia, would you like to answer that?
Thank you. Yes, thank you so much, Alana, and for Erica for asking the question. So to clarify, so like Stephen Profiter mentioned, the 24-month eligibility proposal is still included at the time of the May revise because you know, the May revise was sort of takes the January proposals and includes them in and then adds additional things on top of that. So it's definitely still a proposal on the table. However, it's not been voted on yet, and it has not passed, and it's not the law yet. So for anything, you can't act on it in your programs until it's the law. And, you know, at the current, you know, if the budget is passed on time this year, if everything is good to go, then this would be the law effective July 1st. But it would not be appropriate for folks to act as if this was already the law before July 1st when it is not yet the law.
Okay. Let's see, anything more specific that we can? I see a lot of thank yous in the chat. We do appreciate that. Our team is here to help make sense of a lot. There is a question about the CSPP expansion grant and any potential awards. I invite someone from PQI to be able to give a minor update. I can also read a response. So the response is that currently the reading and scoring is happening now. Therefore, while it's currently happening, the awards will not be sent out yet. So just keep aware, make sure you're in contact with your PQI consultant. I'm sure they'll let you know when it's closed and they'll let you know when those scans are ported. Again, another thank you. That's what we're here for. Okay. There is also just a question about updates on the UPK FAQs specific to charter schools. I'd like to invite Shana to see if there's just a response about when expectations could happen or what in the works is happening.
Hi, thank you, Alana, and thank you for asking that question. Currently, we are working around this answer. Stephen Proffer, you can jump in if I'm incorrect, but we are still working on getting a clear answer out for that. We are hoping that we will be able to have our FAQ page updated soon around charter schools. But currently, that is something we are still working on. Correct, Stephen Profiter?
Yes, and I was actually typing a response to that question, but I'll say it here. I think it was Heather's question, I believe, from San Bernardino. So yes, that's correct, Shanna. There were some pieces we were waiting on from the May revise to see if it changed any of our draft answers. And I don't think we saw anything that changed our draft answer specific to charter. So there's an FAQ that we are working on releasing regarding requirement to offer. Regarding planning, so if regarding planning, we have heard kind of these situations where it's like I'm a single charter school, or I've got a charter. Anyway, there's things that currently kind of exist in among LEA's options around like transfers, inter-district transfers, and things like that. But we also know that we've also said in our guidance and in our template that multiple LEAs could create a plan together. We actually encourage that in a lot of places, especially where we have LEAs that maybe don't have an early learning program, and an LEA that does have an early learning program. There's a lot that we can learn from each other just by by working together. So I think that's all I had to add to that.
Perfect. We'll see if there's any quick responses that we can give before we move on to part 2 of our webinar. You know, any of the quick ones, they're currently being, someone on our team is responding with an answer. So these questions that are on the Q&A, our team is here until 5 o'clock and we will be here to respond to questions. However, I think it's time for us to close our part 1 and welcome onto our part 2 to be talking about with our Cdmi S and the MOU update. So a warm welcome for Jane.
Thank you, Alana. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of this webinar. In the next 25 minutes, my team and I will provide you with the information on the maintenance and optimization M&O work on the Child Development Management Information System. We call it Cdmi S. Next slide, please. Thank you. First, I'd like to introduce our Cdmi S team to you. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Jane Liang. I'm the administrator for the Office of Applied Data Research and Evaluation, which we call ADRE, with the EED. We oversee the Cdmi S data collection and use the data to provide analytical support to the early education division, as well as to various education partners. In addition, we oversee the early education program evaluation contracts. With me today are 2 members of the ADRE team. I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you.
Thank you, Jane. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Josie Chan, and I'm a Staff Services Analyst with the Applied Data Research and Evaluation Office. Besides providing support to Cdmi S users, I also work to oversee our early education program evaluation contracts, one of which is the Cdmi S Maintenance and Optimization contract, which is the one responsible for the exciting new features and services we'll be touching on today. Next, I'll pass it on to my fellow analyst, Steven Granados, to introduce himself.
Thank you, Josie. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Steven Granados, and I'm a Staff Services Analyst within the Office of Applied Data Research and Evaluation. One of my primary roles is providing prompt support to both internal and external users of the Child Development Management Information System, and our office strives to provide the best customer support as we provide services to approximately 735 total agencies and 1,700 active users. As of recent, we're working closely on a contract to optimize the Cdmi S and are incredibly excited to launch these new features for all of you.
Thank you, Josie and Stephen. We are a small but mighty team supporting the numbers of contractors and active Cdmi S users on data reporting submissions that Stephen has just mentioned earlier. I want to thank you all for working with us in providing the monthly data report. Next slide, please. Now, let's take a look at the overview of this presentation. First, we're going to explain the purpose of the Cdmi S M&O work. We will introduce to you the new features and functionalities of this work. Then we will provide you with the implementation plan. The goal of this work is to enhance the Cdmi S and improve user experience. Therefore, we need your partnership to assist us with testing and feedback. We will also present a brief timeline of the Cdmi S M&O contract work. Finally, We will provide the resource and the contact information. Next slide, please. Thank you. The Cdmi S was built more than 20 years ago, and while it served us well in the past, it's time we put in the resources and efforts to modernize it. As part of our efforts in continuous improvement, we always strive to improve the services to our children, their service providers, and all others involved in early education and the care field. We hope to achieve these goals in our effort to improve the Cdmi S. First, to better serve all partners in early education and care programs. We've designed our improvement based on years of feedback from the field and are working on addressing as many concerns as we could within the scope of work. We've prioritized this project as a maintenance and optimization M&O contract to tweak the Cdmi S to our needs rather than looking into reinvent the system, which would have required the approval from the Department of Technology. Next, we want to improve user experience. Our team has heard you as direct users of the Cdmi S, and our goal is to reduce your submission time and improve efficiency, as well as to increase user autonomy. Finally, we like to modernize our old database system to better fit our current times. We want the Cdmi S to look, feel, and act like a modern database. Next slide, please. In early 2021, we released the request for offer, the RFO, with the statement of work. After reviewing the submission, the CDE select Capital Tech Solutions as the winning bidder. The CTS is the Sacramento-based tech firm with a history of about 20 years and a team of 25 employees. The CTS specializes in education software applications. Part of the modernizing the Cdmi S is to use the new technology to make the Cdmi S look and feel like the modern database system. One of the technology Stephen will elaborate later on in details is the bootstrap technology, so that the database system can be accessed by different devices with a customized look. Other major work of this contract is to shorten the file processing time and provide instant report status to the data submitters. Lastly, we've worked to add the new features and functionalities. Next, I'm going to turn over to Josie for more details on what you can expect from the Cdmi S M&O work.
Thank you, Jane. Now that we've heard an overview on the purpose of this project, let's move on to what to expect in terms of Cdmi S improvements. The new and improved Cdmi S will feature multiple upgrades, including the following. Number one, expanded device compatibility. The Cdmi S will now be accessible from various devices such as laptops, tablets, or smartphones, and will automatically resize the screen to fit your device using Bootstrap technology. Next, we have automation of tasks. Tasks that used to require multiple parties to be involved, like recovering your username, will now be automated. The next slide will show a snippet of what this looks like in our first phase, which focused on automating login credential retrievals and reactivating deactivated accounts. We're also going to add new functionalities. Along with the automation of existing services, we are adding new functionalities that will allow users to view their reporting progress, log history, and track their submissions. We're also adding a function for communication between the California Department of Education, CDE, and the California Department of Social Services, CDSS, and contractors. This new service will allow the CDE or CDSS to send text messages to contractors to address specific issues through their Cdmi S landing page. And lastly, we have status checks. Among other things, users will now be able to view how their current month reporting compares to the previous month, which offers a helpful tool for comparing the number of children reported between months. This is just a brief view of the new features that will soon be available with the new Cdmi S, and we've chosen a select few for a more detailed sneak peek. Next slide, please. Thank you. Username recovery. As mentioned before, the new and improved Cdmi S will include many upgrades, one of which is the automation of tasks for increased user autonomy. Let's first take a look at what this looks like in relation to username recovery. Historically, if a Cdmi S account holder had forgotten what their Cdmi S username was, they would have had to contact either their agency super user or Cdmi S support staff to recover their username. Users could not independently identify this information. In the updated process, users will now be able to utilize the forgot username function, through which Cdmi S users can enter the email address registered with their Cdmi S account and quickly receive their username via an email from the Cdmi S inbox. This will eliminate the need to reach out to other agency staff or Cdmi S support and minimizes the wait time to receive this information. Next slide, please. Thank you. Similarly, for password recovery, historically, if a Cdmi S account holder had forgotten what their Cdmi S password was, they would have to contact either their agency super user or Cdmi S support staff in order to recover their most recent password. Alternatively, if there was a password hint, users could see this password hint option that they created themselves. However, if users still could not recall their password with the hint, they then had to reach out to either an agency user or Cdmi S support to retrieve their password. Because this information is kept secure and private, if users reached out to Cdmi S support for this information, a phone call had to be scheduled with the Cdmi S support staff in order to share the password over the phone. In this new updated process, users will now be able to utilize the forgot password function, through which users can enter their Cdmi S username and quickly receive password reset instructions from an email. This process will ask users to reset their password and also allow users to update their password hint anytime a password is reset. Next slide, please. Thank you. Last but not least, account reactivation. Historically, super users had the ability to request for deactivated users to be reactivated, or deactivated Cdmi S users themselves would often contact Cdmi S support staff directly at the Cdmi S inbox to have their accounts reactivated. Cdmi S staff would then manually reactivate these accounts, and users would only be able to log back in if they remembered their username and most recent password upon reactivation. If users did not remember this information, they would then have to go through the corresponding processes in order to retrieve that information again. With the new updates, if the user has been deactivated due to 90 days of inactivity, they can reactivate their account themselves by entering their username and following the instructions in the activation email from the Cdmi S inbox. Upon reactivation, users can log back in or follow the previous password and username processes in order to recover their login credentials. For deactivation reasons other than inactivity for 90 days, the historical process will continue for security purposes. We're very excited for these new changes as they will cut down wait times, increase user autonomy, and make this Cdmi S overall more user-friendly to all account users. Next, we'll move on to some completely new features that we've added. 801A Submittal Status. A completely new function that will be added is the 801A Submittal Status option, accessible from the function menu. Users will now be able to view their agency's 801A Submittal Status and view a specific reporting period by selecting the report, month, and year. This new page will allow agencies to compare selected reporting period numbers with previous month numbers. Users will be able to compare the number of children reported in the selected month with the total number of children reported in the previous month. This function will also be available for the total number of families, as well as the total number of children. For dual contract or multi-contract agencies, this new function will be extremely useful for viewing breakdowns by contract type across reporting periods. Next slide, please. Thank you. Another new function we're excited to share with you is the account transaction history option, which will also be accessible from the function menu. Users will now be able to view their agency's account transaction history of both manual and electronic submissions, indicate a specific reporting timeframe by selecting a starting and ending report month and year. This new function will allow users to view the type of report, whether that's an 801A, 801B, or SPR report, the month the report was submitted for, total submittal records, the date of submission, and the report status. I'll now pass it on to Stephen to share some other new features.
Alrighty, thank you, Josie. We will now cover the updated processing times for the CDD 801A reports submitted via electronic file transfer. For many years now, we've been consistently told that our long processing times prevent Cdmi S users from working efficiently on their reports. For the live site, users currently have to wait till the next day to continue their reporting since the servers process their reports at 1:45 a.m. every night. For the test site, users have to wait approximately 1 to 4 hours for the reports to process. These long wait times impede workflow and make reporting much more difficult. Beyond this, the batch processor has been known to stop working at times, and some reports never end up uploading to our database. We've listened and are proud to say that we've worked with our contractor to reduce these long processing times. Every CDD 801A report submitted to the live site will now process instantaneously. You'll know right away if your report has passed or failed, and because of this, we'll no longer have any need for the test site. So we'll be removing the test site once this feature is implemented, as it is no longer necessary due to our quickened processing times. Because of this, Cdmi S users will no longer need to remember 2 different sets of login credentials. Next slide, please. Thank you. Next, I will introduce a new correspondence feature accessible to all Cdmi S users via the landing page. Upon logging in, both regular and super users will have access to a dashboard that will show all messages and notifications sent from their consultants and the Cdmi S team. These messages will include helpful information on topics such as late notices, lock date reminders, warnings of apportionment withholding, and many more important alerts. The Cdmi S team may also use this dashboard to provide updates on work being done to the Cdmi S website so that contractors are well informed on all Cdmi S affairs. Additionally, PQI consultants will now receive email notices when Cdmi S users request any additions, deletions, or revisions to their agency information. This will expedite the process of updating agency information, as users will no longer have to reach out to their assigned consultant to inform them that they have approvals pending. Next slide, please. Next, I will cover updates that will make the Cdmi S visually appealing, functionally rich, and more accessible. The Cdmi S website will be updated to support a high-quality cascading style sheets framework called Bootstrap, which Jane alluded to earlier. A lot of you may be wondering what this is and how it'll affect you. Well, many industry-leading companies use Bootstrap for their websites, so the way the website appears and behaves will be familiar. Sample companies include Apple, Spotify, Twitter, LinkedIn, and many more. Bootstrap will expand Cdmi S's compatibility with the latest versions of each major platform's default browsers. For Macs, this will include Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and Opera. For Windows, this will include Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Microsoft Edge, and Opera as well. Additionally, Cdmi S will now work with both desktop computers and mobile devices such as smartphones and tablets. This is made because of Bootstrap's digital responsiveness. The Cdmi S web pages will scale up or down to the screen size of the device they are being used on and only show certain parts that are required and hide other parts that are not significant. Lastly, this new software will allow Cdmi S to present elements like buttons, info banners, tables, etc. in a consistent, familiar, and easy-to-use format. It's extremely rare that a user who goes to a Bootstrap-based application wonders, where should I click? Web apps based on Bootstrap all follow a pattern that users are used to, so they know what to click to get the right result. Next slide, please. Next, we'll discuss CDE's steadfast effort towards providing accessible information to all users. Due to both federal and state laws, we are obligated to ensure that all CDE information and communications technology are fully accessible to persons with disabilities. Since the early 2000s, CDE has been the leading state agency in web accessibility. We consistently strive to develop and maintain electronic information that is accessible, inclusive, and shares a universal design. Bootstrap will enhance Cdmi S to allow for assistive technology to better support text-to-speech converters, speech-to-text converters, screen magnifiers, and much more. Bootstrap's interactive components such as modal dialogues, drop-down menus, and custom tooltips are designed to work for touch, mouse, and keyboard users. In accordance with the accessible, rich internet application suite of roles and attributes, these components should also be understandable and operable using assistive technologies such as screen readers. In regards to color contrast, we have noted that Bootstrap's default palette has insufficient color contrast. So we require our contractors to manually modify and extend these default colors to ensure adequate color contrast ratios. Lastly, content that should be visually hidden but remains accessible to assistive technologies such as screen readers can be styled accordingly with Bootstrap technology. Next slide, please. Next, I will cover our implementation plan for these updates and features. Firstly, I want to emphasize that we will provide all of you with ample time to prepare for each phase that we roll out, starting with communication. Prior to each phase rollout, we'll provide all of you with Cdmi S update bulletins, emails, and training webinars. These channels of communication will ensure that all users are aware and prepared for the changes to come. And right now, I'd like to take this opportunity to note that all users can access our Cdmi S update bulletin board by navigating to the Cdmi S login page and clicking on the hyperlink titled Cdmi S Update. If you have trouble accessing this bulletin board, please email cdmis@cde.ca.gov. Next, we'll continue talking about our partnership with users by conducting user acceptance tests. During user acceptance tests, we will select a sample of users from the field and have them provide us with feedback on these new features. These users will have the opportunity to work with our Cdmi S test environment, ensure that its new features work as intended. We'll provide users with a standard for reporting errors, bugs, and other test feedback. Once we have analyzed the user feedback, we'll work with our contractors to address these issues. If you're interested in participating in our user acceptance tests, please send an email to cdmis@cde.ca.gov. Next, do me a favor, can we go back one slide to the implementation plan? Perfect. Now we're going to cover the documentation. So as you may know, Cdmi S users have access to a plethora of information on the Cdmi S support webpage. This includes user manuals, guides, reporting schedules, snapshot tutorials, webinar materials, and much more. We will update all of this documentation to reflect these new changes. There will be step-by-step guides that illustrate how to use these new features. And furthermore, the Cdmi S team will always be ready on standby to help users with any questions or concerns they may still have. Lastly, let's now cover the user training webinars. Similar to our Cdmi S Business with the State training webinar, we will provide virtual training webinars where we will cover these new features in detail. We are hoping to record these training webinars and post them onto our Cdmi S webinars webpage. Now Josie will speak on our partnership with the Cdmi S users.
Thank you, Stephen. As mentioned before, the Cdmi S Improvement Project's overarching goal is to enhance the user experience. With this focus on the user, partnering with our Cdmi S users is critical to the success of this project. We'll be rolling out system changes in several phases and are collaborating with relevant users to ensure we are identifying and addressing the right areas. As part of this collaboration, we're working to facilitate user acceptance tests to garner user feedback that will help identify improvement areas, the first of which was a huge success. We're extremely excited to reveal all of these improvements to you all at once, but I'll let Stephen speak more on what that launch timeline will look like.
Alrighty, thank you, Josie. I will now provide you all with a tentative timeline. Could we move to the next slide, please? Perfect, thank you. The technical work, which entails the software coding or programming, first started in early August of 2021, and we are on track to complete this work in August of 2022. During this timeframe, both CTS and the Cdmi S team have been meeting frequently to discuss project updates, conduct internal tests, provide user cases, and much more. For the implementation of this new code, We plan to divide these updates and features into multiple phases. We will be releasing these rollouts approximately once per month. As mentioned previously, we will provide users with an extensive assortment of guides to navigate these new features. We will launch phase 1 on June 6, 2022. This first phase will include the following new features: username recovery, password recovery, and account reactivation. We are sending out Zoom invitations for our Cdmi S M&O training webinar. We actually sent them earlier today to all active users, program directors, and executive directors. If you have not received the Zoom invitation and would like to attend, please email cdmis@cde.ca.gov. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so before we answer any questions in the Q&A, we'd like to share some important resources with you all. The first being another reminder of the Cdmi S support inbox. The Cdmi S team is continuing to work remotely, so the best place to reach us presently is through our email, which is cdmis@cde.ca.gov. We are more than happy to set up a call with you, so if you could please email us first with your phone number and ideal times to reach you, we'll give you a call. And our call will come from an undisclosed phone number, as we are still working remotely. Next, another valuable resource is the Cdmi S webpage, which has information on reporting, FAQs, past webinars, and snapshot tutorials. This can be found at http://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/cd/ci/cc-data.asp. Would definitely recommend taking a look at what is available to familiarize yourself with the Cdmi S contents. Lastly, another reminder of the Cdmi S is of the Cdmi S live site, which can be found at https://www.cde.ca.gov/cdmis. And please remember that this is the official site. Although the test site can be used to see how your electronic file will perform on the live site, it will not actually be counted as completed until your report is successfully completed on the live site. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Stephen and Josie. We have been here now is the question and answer time. We have been monitoring the question Q&A and seeing all these questions in the earlier session, but once it hit the Cdmi S, it suddenly slowed or actually stopped. We don't have a lot of questions. So one of the questions earlier is whether today's seminar is the same as the June 6th. We made the announcement. We have the June 6th is the phase 1 rolling out the training webinar. The answer is no. Today, we're providing the update of the Cdmi S M&O reporting, M&O contract work. On June 6th, which will be the first phase rolling out. So we were hosting that webinar as training users to use the new functionality, as Josie explained earlier. And these 3 new functionality is how to automatically recover your login credential, including the login name and password, and how to reactivate your account if your account is expired due to the 90-day inactivities. And I wanted to make one correction on the PowerPoint. The webinar June 6th starts 10:30 as indicated in the email sent out. It's 10:30 to 11:30 because we booked the whole 10 o'clock to 11:30 to just give ourselves the half-hour preparation. Just like most of the webinar, we always prepare setting up 30 minutes ahead of the time. So the correct time is 10:30. Let's check, is there any other questions? If not, I'm gonna turn back to Alana. And before I turn back to Alana, I wanna thank you all for attending this session. I want to thank you for working with the CDMIS team in data reporting. And I want to let you know our team here at the CDE strive to provide a superior customer support to each and every one of you. Have a great rest of the day. And Alana.
Guess what, Jane? There is a question for you.
Oh, great.
It came in from Raymond. The question is, will the submission export function be different?
Submission export function, no, it will not be different.
That was an easy response to the question.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
we didn't make that change unless there's a need to change it, but no, it will not be the different. But we added a lot of the function of you can download your status, and just like Stephen mentioned, and Josie mentioned, we have, if you pull out any month, we have the comparison of the current month's reporting enrollment, the number of the children and number of the family compared with the previous month's the reporting. All right, Alana.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Jane. And we'll be here for another 6 minutes. So don't go anywhere in case another CDMIS question comes up.
Happy to answer any questions.
Oh, and guess what? Another one just came in from our friend Raymond. Can the export format be changed to a pure .xls?
We made all the requests for the that's the CATS or the CDMIS.
Can the export format be changed to a pure, it doesn't say which one.
I can answer this one if you'd like to.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to jump in here. Unfortunately, we're going to have to continue with the tab delimited format in alignment with the SPR, the new system that we plan to implement. So unfortunately, Raymond, we're not going to do any Excel. It's going to continue to be the tab delimited. But the CDMIS team is always willing to help. I know it can be a little frustrating because it's a bit of an archaic formatting style, but we're always here to help. And unfortunately, it will continue to be tab delimited.
Thank you for the quick jump in there, Stephen.
Of course.
Okay, well, while our team is answering anything unanswered, I'm going to serenade you all with some resources. Let's see. The EED COVID-19 guidance webpage, which has more than just COVID-19 guidance. You can find that at https://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/re/elcd-covid19.asp. You can find the webinar slides from this webinar that will be on there as well. Management bulletins and frequently asked questions. The EED emergency email inbox, although instead, I would like to say out loud to please email everything to upk@cde.ca.gov. For accessibilities, I will also mention the one that's on the screen, eedemergency@cde.ca.gov. You can also find your PQI office regional consultants, who I'm sure you all know by first name. That can be found at https://www.cde.ca.gov/sp/cd/ci/assignments.asp. Consultants are most easily reached by email, or you can call the consultant of the day. That is at 916-322-6233. That will be during office hours, so business hours, 9 to 5. All right, let's see if there's any last one. Oh, there is a CDMIS question, so I'm going to ask that Stephen and or Josie can get into that chat for our friend Raymond. And I'll invite Stephen for closing.
All righty. I see your question's a little bit different here. Are you referring to downloading from the management reports function, Raymond? And if so, yes, it does produce an HTML. Okay, there we go. The answer is yes. So it is an HTML formatted table. You know what? I consider this a form of user acceptance testing. I'm going to take this and I'm going to work with our contractors. I'm going to ask them if maybe we can produce a CSV file, because that's a little bit different in terms of when you import them to our database, it has to be a tab delimited. However, this is a little bit different. So I'm going to take note of this and we'll keep you updated, okay? All righty.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to count to 5 in my head, and then I'm going to ask Virginia Early to come and close this out. It's good to just take a deep breath every once in a while.
Thank you so much, everyone. We know this has been a lot of information. We really appreciate all of the questions. Looks like we've answered 87 questions during our time together here. So thank you to everyone that attended for all of the work you do every day for children and families. And also to our staff. These webinars take a lot of work, and we want to make sure that we're providing you the best information as part of our partnership together. To close, your strength and passion have helped us get to where we are today. So thank you again. And we will end our webinar here.